Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, the goal of the show is for our guests to share game-changing stories. And working through a pandemic, most industries have felt the pain, and the financial industry is no stranger to this. So I'm excited to have the president of Castlemark Wealth on the show today and share her stories and her experiences as what allowed her to not only maintain her customer base, but grow it. So I'd like to welcome Robyn Thompson to the podcast.
Hello, Karen. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you, Robyn. So why don't you just give the listeners a little bit of background of color as to what got you to becoming the CEO of Castlemark Wealth?
Well, as everything in life, nothing starts in a straight line. So, we kind of zig and zag to where we end up. I originally started my career in journalism. So communications has always been sort of where I've hung my hat. But before that, I studied a lot in business and marketing. So I started off on both the business side of this business, and then I decided that I was going to go into the financial, actual buying and selling and advice business. So I started working for a company by the name of Croft Financial Group, and I did that for quite some time. I actually worked as their vice president for a few years before I decided to start my own firm, which is now Castlemark Wealth Management. I've had this firm for about 11 years now. A couple of reasons for the change. Croft Financial Group is a discretionary portfolio manager here in Toronto, which is where I'm located. And, they have a great firm and a great practice. And I still have, great, associations with them and continue to hold a license there as an associate portfolio manager. But what I found is that my clients wanted something different. They wanted something more that I could offer them working under an umbrella called Croft Financial Group. And what they wanted was access to different products. They wanted access to services that wasn't something that was part of the current umbrella that I was working for. So I decided to step out and go independent. So Castlemark Wealth Management is an independent owned financial company. So I provide integrated wealth management for individuals, mainly focusing on female entrepreneurs, business owners, and C-suite executives. So everything, Karen, from financial planning, wealth management, taxes, insurance, all the way down to estate planning. So really taking that initial part of my career, and again, in the sales role, because as you know, clients want to have a full suite of services. And if you can't provide that, they're going to go somewhere else. And I was no longer willing to have my pipe be filled up and then lose clients to competition because I wasn't able to offer that full rounded suite of products. So I made the decision to jump out on my own and, take that sort of proverbial entrepreneurial leap into my own firm. And now I have a very successful practice that I own and operate, and my clients have access to a service shelf and a product shelf that suits their needs and suits my needs as someone who is in sales for a living.
Wow, what a journey. What an amazing journey. And it sounds like you're very customer centric, is that they were asking for more access and a more diverse offering, and your current situation couldn't provide it. So you took the leap, which is great that you did. And now you're in a position to really help them and give them what it is they're looking for.
And Kieran, I think that, you hit it on the nail of the head right there. It's about, what is it that your clients want? What is it that you're listening for? Because I think that if you really step back and, people that are in the sales business or in the entrepreneur business or anybody who sells any widgets or gadgets or service for a living, the gold is in that detail. It's in what they're telling you it is that they want as a deliverable. And then it's up to you to either decide how I'm going to deliver this in a way that provides value to them, or, do I want to continue but look for a different client that fits that sort of shelf? So, of course, I could have stayed with Croft Financial Group and just focused on their service offering. But if you're listening to your clients and that is where you're vested and you're willing to pivot, then you need to start thinking about things in a new way, because sales, like every business, especially through the pandemic, as you're well, Karen, things have changed. Business has changed. Sales, tactics have changed. The way people listen to you now has changed. So you need to change with it in order to provide that value or that differentiating factor to your clients, or someone else is going to.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dog eat dog world out there, because you're right. Those who aren't pivoting or who are not agile are unfortunately, they're no longer around.
Unfortunately, we see it a lot in this businesses and in every business. I mean, I've been watching you for a long time, and you've done a great job of pivoting your business. You used to do a lot of in-person events, and now your business has also shifted to online. And look where you are now with the podcast and being so successful in your rankings. You've had to pivot significantly in your business as well, and that's what we do as successful salespeople. We need to pivot and go where our audience is, provide that value, and provide that listening that they expect of us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That means a lot coming from you. And you've mentioned a few times like the listening and the details. And as salespeople, I think a lot of people would think, the gift of the gab, and it's the actual opposite. It's like the ability to listen. And so, can you share a little bit about like, what are you seeing that why people can't listen? Like, why are they not willing to give silence or to hold space for their clients who, if they would do that, they're going to share what it is they're looking for. But I find so often salespeople just make it about themselves and kind of their solution and their pitch. And I think especially in times like this, when customers are so, in your world, there's volatility, there's uncertainty. They want to be heard. They want to talk. So what would you say to those people who are just not even aware that they're not listening or holding space for their clients?
Holding space is really the key. And I look at it as, one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody is the presence of your time, and it is the authentic use of someone else's time. And I think that when you really be able to sit down and have that conversation, the first thing that you need to do, or the first thing that I do, especially as I go through my sales processes, is, I need to, first of all, I don't want to have to unsell myself, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to have a conversation with clients to find out, first of all, are these clients the ideal clients for me? Are they someone that I can advise? Are they advisable? Do they fit within my target market? Do they fit within the sphere of my business before I start going off into a conversation about how I can serve them and how I can help them? Because if I don't know what it is they're looking for, I have no way to determine what I'm supposed to be talking about. I can't tell you how many people approach me, whether it be wholesalers or other salespeople trying to, get me to put their product on my shelf or to use their planning service or their taxware service. And they don't spend the time to say, Robyn, what are your clients looking for? How can I help you? What is that gap that you need to be filled? And if you're not doing that as a salesperson, then perhaps you need to look at a different vocation.
Yeah.
That's just the truth, Karen. Like, we need to be listening to our clients. It's
Yeah.
not about the money. Again, we're salespeople. We eat what we kill, but that's probably a bad terminology. But it is. I mean, it always has been. It always will be. But if you are not effective at listening to your clients and effective at looking in between those lines and figuring out what it is that they need you to be for them, then it's not going to work. So, in my career, I was, similar to that, because we all make mistakes as we go. And I'd be like, okay, great. I have a potential client on the hook, and it's going to be a great sale, and we'll talk about it. And at first I want to be like, and blah, blah, blah. These are all the things that I do, and I'm so great, and this is why you should hire me. And then they would be like, well, they would tell me what they're looking for, and they wouldn't be even close to my target market. So now I have to convince them of why I'm not the great person for them, and I'm not the best salesperson for them, and that they should go look somewhere else, right? So to unsell yourself is a pretty hard bell to unring. So first, it's to determine, and again, in a sales relationship, is that, what is the value that you're each providing to each other? But you need to be able to listen to those fine messages before you can go off and try to sell them the widgets and gadgets. Because if you start with that, if you start with the product and not the why, you're already dead in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the term confirmation bias comes to light there. It's just that happy ears. We hear what we want to hear. And I see that a lot too, because I get pitched right away. And I just think, just to what you said, is we have to sell the problem. Like, we have to increase their level of awareness of where that gap is. And even before that, determine that ICP, like, is this even a right fit? And I think why people, and if I were to say I didn't do this in my early career, I'd be lying as well. Because the minute I heard my product, I was all over it, pitching as well. But since then, I've obviously learned. And I think listening is definitely a huge part of it, but really asking thought-provoking questions that is going to get them to think differently about their business. And also, I think when you ask thought-provoking questions or questions that they've never heard of that makes them pause, you separate yourselves. Because for me in the financial sales world, it seems like there's a lot of people that are looking and sounding the same. So how else could you differentiate? What else would you add to that list between active listening, asking great questions? What else can people do to really stand out?
Oh my God, there's so many ways. I think that the another way to do it is to really, you need to be speaking to your natural market. So as I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, is that, I'm a journalist, right? I started out in journalism. I love communications. It's where I started my career. And, since the start of my business, I produce content. I produce content and more content. So weekly blog posts, I appear in the media across the country. So both TV, print, online, podcast. So when I'm speaking to people that are in the audience, I'm speaking to people that are my natural clients, because they're listening and they're engaged to what they're hearing. But for me, by being engaged in my natural, where I feel the most comfortable, it means I'm the most myself. When you're the most yourself, that's when you're going to receive more kickback or more reaction from the people that are listening, because all of a sudden they can relate to who you are, because first of all, you're being authentic, and second of all, you're speaking in a way that you know well. So when you know someone and you see someone that, whether someone like yourself who's doing podcast, or whether someone who's doing, interviews on TV, or writing their content, they are clear that you are the expert in this field. They are clear you know what you're talking about, and they are clear that you can provide value. So the question then becomes is, so fine, you've done active listening, you've had some confirmation bias, you provided or demonstrated that you are an expert in this field, because in order for someone to buy from you, you need to be an expert. There's a lot of other experts that are right behind you doing the same thing. I mean, I'm in financial services, and oh my God, there are so many people in financial services. So like you said, if you don't differentiate yourself and you don't talk to your natural market and where you can connect with people the most, then you're going to be trying to push water uphill. So some people resonate really well with speaking engagement. So people will join local associations, whether it's the local chamber of commerce or other speaking engagements within their community. Haltech is one, obviously, that I've seen you at, Karen. And they'll start to speak to a natural audience in their own environment. And then they'll start to have inquiries, and they'll start to have warm conversations, because they've seen you, they've heard you, they know you, you've tagged your content, you've reiterated your content, and you put it in a place that's natural for you as a speaker. I've seen other people that do podcasts and do a great job, as podcasts about having people listen to the different strategies and techniques. But if you're someone who's in podcasting and you're someone who's in journalism, the last thing that you want to try to do is pick up the call every 5 minutes and go through the old school yellow pages, as they call, and do cold calls, because that's not speaking to your environment. And at the end of the day, it just feels ick. I don't know about you, but it's ick when you try to do stuff that's not a natural fit for you. And people know, people tell. So you're not fooling anybody if you try to do that. This isn't me, but I need to close sales kind of spiel.
Yeah, no, I love that natural market, because I think everything you said for me, which makes a good salesperson, is just creating that safe space for yourself to really show that authenticity piece. And I think what that does to your audience is it disarms them. And I think in your world, I mean, in sales in general, trust is, fundamental. But for me, I ask my clients, to share their sales process with me. You ask them to share, their T4 with you. So obviously trust is huge.
I'll ask them for a lot more than that, but it generally starts
Starting.
with something like that, for sure.
But think
Mhm.
about that. If I'm asking you to divulge, to disclose, to disarm and be vulnerable, like, you need to know who I am. You need to know that I am capable of, helping you, that I've helped others like you. And I think what you said of just meeting them where they're at. So I think knowing where that is, if your audience is on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and then we need to become mini marketers. So what is their top of mind for them? Like, what can I write about? What can I speak on that really is going to highlight me as the most capable person, and really just show them also that I'm human, that I want to connect with them and help them. Because I think financial, it can be very black and white, but at the end of the day, people buy from people.
Mhm. They do. And I think that, when you break it down into smaller parts and you try to look through. So I've had a lot of conversations about content. And, I am content, but what is the point of the content? And so you can write great pieces of content that can showcase your expertise, that can talk about what it is that you do. But if no one is reading that content and it's falling on deaf ears, then what's the point, right? So you need to take that content or whatever it is that you're doing and take it a step further. So in my case, I use all the different social channels. So I'm on Vimeo, which is my video channel. I'm on Twitter. Twitter and LinkedIn are my very business sites. Instagram and Facebook is the more personal side of Robyn, because these days people want to know who you are and what you stand for, both in your personal and professional life. There's definitely some crossing over of those periods or those phases in people's lives, and usually they were very separate, but now they tend to all meld together. So when you look at that, so where's the content being shared? So when I'm sharing content like that in all my posts and all my blogs, I'm looking for keywords that people might be searching for. I'm essentially using my search engine optimization tools to make sure that when I'm looking through my articles and what's being hit on my website, what blog posts are resonating, I'm writing more of those. I'm writing that things are looking for. I'm writing it for things that I'm looking because my content has hit a chord. So if I can do that and continue to write content or be able to pivot based on wherever we are in the sales cycle, then I have a higher chance of having those inbound leads. I'm an inbound marketer. I like inbound leads. I'm not a cold call marketer. I like to be able to create content and funnels where clients come to me with a warm lead, whether it be through my different social channels, whether it be through my newsletter, whether it be through referrals. One of the things that I really like is the social shares. So when you're doing a blog or you've got any content you're putting out, make sure you're using those social share buttons. So if someone's reading it and it doesn't apply to them, it might apply to their friend, or it might apply to their brother or their sister. Make it easy for people to share your content. Make it easy for people to have your content across multiple platforms, so you're hitting as many people as possible. I mean, the technology side behind our business right now, it's everything. That is the way people communicate. That's the way people receive information. Video is huge. I do a lot of video messages embedded inside of my communications. Before this happened, Karen, I'd never done a Zoom call in my entire career. Remember the first client that I had, he's like, let's do a Zoom call. And I was like, I actually kept my photo up the entire time because I was like, I'm not ready for this. Like, I'm not coiffed and ready to see clients because I wasn't prepared for this. So, it's about, understanding that we don't always know how to do this. And we're starting from a place that, that changes so quickly, but you need to start. And if you're not starting, then you need to look at ways to be able to implement these other things into your practice, to be able to, make that, I don't want to say make that sale, because when you're doing these things, what you're doing is you're building yourself up as an expert, and you're taking away that salesman, the salesman thing that we have. It's kind of like people think of, car salesmen or insurance salesmen, or people like me as, that kind of put like the creepy people in the corner, right? Because that's the perception they have. So it's up to you to change that perception. So you take them from the people are trying to sell me something to, oh my God, people are actually trying to provide a solution to a problem that I have. And it's going to save me taxes. It's going to make my money. It's going to protect my children. It's going to send them to school. It's going to allow me to go on my safari in Africa. It's going to allow me to do all of the things that I want to do in my life. So like you said, it's about plugging that hole, but in a way that gives them the ability to be, oh my God, I didn't know I need that, but I really need that. So I should call them and I should engage to see what value they can bring to the table.
Yeah, I love that. And you are definitely, you wear that hat well. I mean, you are all over the platforms. You've done an amazing job of just embracing change. As you said, how many of us, I actually was virtual, I would say 5 years pre-pandemic, so I had a bit of a head start. But I would say most business owners like yourself were not. So I think, embracing the change, getting uncomfortable or getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and just leaning into that discomfort. Because I think, that's where change comes about, and realizing that the longer we stay still, we're just becoming obscure, and it's going to be very easy for them to, go to the next one above us, because we're not moving. We're not agile.
Mm-hmm. It also takes failure, right? So I have done a lot of different sales things that have not worked. When I first started out in my career, this is not even my career, this is way back when. This is past brownies. So past brownies, past McDonald's, past Denny's, past Jumbo Video. So past the things that you do when you're a kid. I did this job, and it was a job where I used to have to go around into buildings. And, so one of the local marketing companies in the area went to salons. They went to beauty salons, and, there's salons that had just started out, or they were trying to increase their market share with it within a specific region. And they negotiated with them, so they negotiated services. So you got a haircut, you got a blowout, you got a manicure, you got a paraffin wax, you say you got an eyebrow wax, and all of those services would usually cost like $299, and they were offering it at $100 if you had this coupon or this ticket. So I joined up, and I went down to all the different like places where I would find women that would do this. So secretaries' offices or dental offices or anywhere where at that time in life, it was a long time ago because I'm old now, it was something that people did. You went into different, with your briefcases and tried to sell things. And I went in and I would get escorted from so many buildings because you're not allowed to solicit, you're not allowed to sell things. So every time I sold one of these coupons, I would get $10. So $10 was my take. So if I sold 10 of them a day, I'd make $100. If I sold 100, if I sold 14 of them a day, I would make $140. And I was like, this is amazing. The more I sell and the more that these women need it, because some of the women, we've all gone through our stages where we've got, Tiffany hair and, a little too much Aquanet in our hair, at least if you're on the female side of it. On the male side, maybe that's Drakkar Noir, but we've all gone through those stages. And, women were excited. They were excited that, oh my God, I get to have all of these things done. And it's only going to cost me, whatever the ticket was, $49 or $100. They were so excited. They got to the local salon. Of course, for the salon, it gets people in their salon and it gets them repeat customers. For me, I made $10. So I got to really take control of what, the value for them, but also the value for me. And, you do that 5 days a week and, you get to ring the bell at the end of the day and, show how many tickets that you got. And it was a rewarding experience, but it was the first time I really got a taste for, okay, I was escorted from many buildings, but the value you're bringing, the cost that they're going to receive for the price they're paying, or the value rather they're receiving for the price they pay, is something that's very rewarding, and, it made me good money. So yeah, but that was my solicitation career, but it taught me a lot of things about grit, and it taught me a lot of things about knocking on doors and making sure that when you're speaking to someone and you walk in those offices, that you're providing something that they need, or if not, you're just, you just get, ushered out. So you have to start, but you have to learn how to start, I'm kind of rambling on here, Karen, but, when I started this, as you mentioned, this isn't, a normal part of business for me. You have to hire experts. I mean, I have people that help me do my social media. I have no idea how to post reels and stories and stuff every day, all day long. My business is to manage people's money. My business is to take care of my clients. It's not my business to do some of these areas that are outside of my realm. I mean, technology, great. Hire an SEO expert. If you don't have a website, hire someone that does websites. You need to invest in your brand and invest in your sales. Or if you're working for a larger company, what material do they have that you can use? I mean, where are you going to sort of start? But make sure that you're getting support, and don't try to do it all yourself, because it is impossible. It's impossible to do it all yourself, and you won't do it well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there's so much. No, you can't. And there's so much there that I would love to unpack. But I love that you recognize failure, because I think, when people look at you, they might think, oh, she's got everything. She's, perfect and everything's the way it should be. But, as you shared, it wasn't always like that. And I think for me, failure says that you had the ability to try. And that's what it is. And I think, you need to fail to know what not to do next time, but also just to lean into, what is working. And I think when you were saying, even looking at the content and the SEO and where are you striking a chord, and then you double down on that. But I don't know how many people, when they're looking at content, are actually doing that. And I think people are releasing it blindly. And they're also, I see so often that they're just sharing. And I just think when you're trying to, as you mentioned, getting in that natural market, is what do you stand for? Like, what's your point of view or your angle on this, what you're sharing? Allow people in so that they can get a sense of, oh, you know what, I'm facing something similar. This seems like she would understand that based on her point of view for this article. And I don't know if it's laziness, unawareness, but like if we need to become mini marketers, we also need to inject some of ourself into what it is we're sharing.
Mhm. And that is really about being authentic to who you are, but it's also about doing some research and getting some support, right? Listen, we don't know everything there is to know about SEO optimization. I know it's certainly not your business, it's certainly not mine. So, if it comes down to, fine, look for a consultant to be able to give you the grassroots. I mean, one of the things that I've learned through the pandemic is really automation. So, I mean, my practice, as I mentioned before, I'd never done a Zoom call because I'm really hands-on with my clients. We're very, I tend to be very face-to-face with my clients or phones. I've never done a video. I've never had a need to do a video. And so really it's just sort of about looking at, what that structure looks like. So within this pandemic, now I use Zoom, I use Teams, I use Google Meet, which are my platforms. From a security perspective, I now have, Google authentication factor, and I have double and triple encryption on my software systems because of the type of business that I'm in. I have all my different, whether it be Vimeo or Vineyard or the different video tools that you need to use in order to communicate with clients. I have file share for clients to be able to upload documents in a protected or protected way. Canva is another great one that I use for any sort of my digital branding type of stuff. If you don't have money to go out and create or pay graphic designers, Canva is a great platform to do newsletters or content creation or blog creation. So, look for some of the different, services or platforms that can support you, take their tutorials and start small. So, there's just so much available out there to you as entrepreneurs these days and as salespeople. Obviously, you need to make sure that if you are working for a larger company or you're working in my business, that it's approved by your compliance department. Any regulators that you have to abide by, or any sort of corporate people need to make sure that they're approving any of your work if you are working for a larger corporation. If you're independent, play with it, see how you feel. Look at Canva, look at Vineyard, look at the different tools that you have to be able to differentiate yourself from other people, because other people are not doing that. So if you can do it, Karen, and you can do it, as you mentioned, in that way where you're in this authentic conversation and you're speaking to that market, then what you're doing is you're really transitioning them from, I need to buy something to, wow, I really need what that person has. And oh my God, I'd be so lucky if they took me on. Like if I could get that product, I would need it so bad. So it's really that sort of shift, but it's understanding that we don't know what we don't know, and start looking for apps and helps and use technology. Because again, I hadn't used it before, and it's changed my life as it relates to how I communicate, my staff communicate, and how clients receive it. So it's been amazing, but I've had to do some work to do it. I want to pull my
Yeah.
hair out
Well,
sometimes because technology is just
oh,
technology and I we're not friends, Karen, as you know. From the start of this call, we had audio issues, and I have tech people on the phone right away. I'm like, okay, so tech people on call. I'm like, okay, something happens and I'm not going live. I'm going live. So let's figure it out.
but at least as you mentioned, Robyn, you can't be everything to everybody. So delegate, right? And I think the reason your clients invest in you and partner with you is because you're there to manage their finances. So if you were there to manage SEO and troubleshoot your Zoom calls, how effective would you be at managing their money?
Mhm. Probably not as effective as my clients would like me to be. So
Exactly.
the good thing is that, when you sell the client, the whole game is retention of the client, right? So, you can get in the door and you can give them your pitch, but it is that authentic long-term relationship that makes salespeople great salespeople. It's something that clients can come back to time and time again, and whatever widget, gadget, or service you're selling, because we're all selling something. It's about solving that problem, and having that client know that time after time after time, they can come back to you and you got this, and they know you do. And
Mhm.
that's really what it's all about, because retention and that repeat sale and that repeat client is the whole game. You don't want to have to go out and hunt every time you need to eat. Hunt and feed your village, and create that infrastructure around you that supports you. And that's really, again, one of the things that I do in my practice is that, retention is the key driver of some of the back end of that sales process, and that value driven trust and advice.
So just hanging on to the retention piece, because I know it is important. It sounds like you've done a few things. You've adopted technology. You've leaned into that. You've embraced video selling. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you use video selling in that post sign off stage? So they partnered with you, and now you want to nurture that relationship. So is it communication on an ongoing basis? Is it just like a checking in with them? Like how do you think video can really support the long-term relationship with your clients? You're not, you're always top of mind with them.
I think that video has a great way to be able to be present in someone else's life without having to be present in their physical domain. And I think that COVID has changed that a lot. I think people have become used to seeing people on computer screens. If you're in any business right now, you have some video platform. If you're at home and you're not in the business world, you have FaceTime or another social sharing app that you use to communicate with your family. So video has become something that's become a normal part of people's lives. Now, you need to understand, first of all, are your clients interested in video? I have some of my older clients who prefer phone calls, and they prefer I'm not going to say rotary phones because, we're not going to date us that far back, but, they prefer phone calls. So first you need to understand, is video the communication tool that they want in order to be communicated with? Is it email? What is the communication? So let's not assume, first of all, that it is all one way or another. Usually in my practice, it's a bit of both now. So we have video calls, then we'll have phone calls to check in, and we'll also have actual in-person meetings, once COVID opens up, and hopefully that happens in the fall. But video is a great way to wrap up a meeting, or to send a video afterward and say, these are the key points that we've discussed on our call. These are the follow-up actions that my office is going to take. This is what you can expect to see from Simone or from Bianca or the different people in my office as it relates to the next steps going forward. Clients always want to know the rules of the sandbox, Karen. They want to know, where am I? What are you doing? What did we say? What's happening next? And what can I expect? They don't like to be confused. They don't want to walk away from the meeting and saying, am I following up? Is she following up? Who's managing this part? Who's managing that part? So video is a great way where they don't have to sit down and read through an email. You can send a video. They can save it into their inbox. Obviously, clearly, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, make sure it's on side for regulatory, make sure it's on side for compliance, make sure it's within your mandate, make sure it's within what you are able to talk about. But again, really give them that confidence that I heard you. This is what you said. And this is what I said we were going to do. And this is what we are going to do. And then do that.
Yeah.
So don't do that
Yeah.
and then not do that. So you need to, let them know you have heard them. Let them know that you took that time. You're present to the conversation. You're authentic to the conversation. You listen to what they need, reiterate it, follow up on it, and make sure you see it through to completion. So video is great for that. You can always use video again and save it as a note in the file. So if you're wondering, okay, so I have a client meeting, what was our last interaction? Where did that paper trail go? What did, assistant one, assistant two, or if you're working for yourself, where did I leave that off? So it's also great for an internal mechanism for checking in to make sure that you also are holding yourself to account and that something didn't get lost along the chain, because things always get lost. We always, some balls drop. Sometimes we're spinning so many plates, but this is a way to really make sure that you're on point, they're on point, and everybody's clear about what the next stages are.
I love the video for yourself. I've actually never done that. Maybe I'll update my to-do list.
Sometimes when you look at the videos of yourself, it's kind of like one eye open because, it's always hard to see yourself on video because you're just, I think we're always our own worst self-critics. And that's really where when we started this podcast at the beginning, it's about, how do salespeople stop just going and starting this, this dialogue of what it is they want to say. And that's where you get back to that full circle of, having the conversation about value and, know who you are, because, what you're selling can be anything. It's about who you are when you're selling and who you're being to that client and what the experience is for them and what it means for them. I love this, so Dan Heath is one of my favorite authors, and he has this, it's a book that I read, and it's got, it's about powerful moments, and it's about crystallizing different powerful moments in people's lives. It's about understanding what those different moments are. So for me, powerful moments are things like clients' retirement, sending their kids to educate to university, having them buy their house, having them make their first million. Those are all really big, powerful moments for my clients. So I make sure that when those moments happen, we celebrate those moments. We acknowledge that this is what we said we were going to do. This is where we are. So whatever the milestones are that you've set for your expectation for your clients, whether they are in my business or whether they're in whichever business that you're in, make sure that once the deliverable that you said is going to be completed, that you acknowledge that it's been completed. You ask them how it landed for them. You celebrate their success, because there's always a buyer and seller on each side. And, everybody wants it to go well and everybody wants it to go smooth. So acknowledge at the end, this was a great contract. This worked out really well. Thank you so much for taking the time and, and walking me through through this process and the deliverable, and everything went as smooth. Or, make sure you're checking back in. And, sometimes it's hard to take negative feedback because, nothing ever goes in a straight line, as I mentioned, and we're always going to have that zig and zag, but it's the ability to be able to hold the space and be able to have the conversation and be able to correct the conversation if it didn't go well, because sometimes it won't. Expect that you're going to fall down at sometimes, because you will, and be able to recover from it in a way that has the clients, continue to trust you, although they feel, they may have, if it didn't go well. But again, put the processes in place and monitor along the way, and don't expect perfection because it just doesn't exist. Really doesn't.
No, it definitely doesn't. And so what I hear there, Robyn, is just creating an experience, and a genuine experience. I think when you say about those milestones that you mentioned, like I get them from, car dealerships. It's my birthday, but it's not a person behind there. So I think that authenticity piece definitely has to be there. And I would also say, just with what you said, is that transparency piece, because I think, you having to go back and, unsell yourself, or, even just soliciting feedback, is just being upfront and transparent. I think just disarms people as well. I think when you're dealing with finances, we need to be completely clear, transparent, and that is going to help build trust as well.
Mhm. And I would say that you need to understand that you are not going to like some of the feedback, but you need to
Mhm.
take it and learn from it and move through it, right? There's lots of clients or lots of different episodes that may happen. Listen, the markets have been, they are volatile, and this is a business that goes up and down all the time. I mean, there's nothing about the stock market or the financial world, whether it be taxes increasing or whether it be budget changes or whether it be Fed announcements or whether it be, seeing stocks rally to their highs and sink to their lows. Last year during the COVID, or the first year during COVID-19, they fell 34% in 30 days. Clients are not happy about that. It's not always a great conversation, but then it's about, this is what's happened. This is where your portfolio is. We've managed it to take some of these downward pressures because we've built the portfolio to withstand some of these different conversations, or the financial plan has been built to withstand some of these shorter term iterations, and give them some idea and some context around, this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is what we've done, and then this is what you can expect next. So again, back to that video, back to that continual references. If things go offside, they go offline, because they will at some point. Just, go back and have that conversation, but be clear when you go back what you're trying to say, and then leave them with feeling whole and complete. So this is what the
Mhm.
next step is going to take for us to correct the situation. If it's that I don't know, say I don't know, and I'm going to find out. So I'll come back to you with the steps. I would never suggest that you take on something or you answer something that you don't have 100% confidence with. If it means you need to take a step back and go take a look at it and circle back, fine. But don't leave them dangling. Don't leave them wondering, what happened? I trust this person and they've left me here, and my boss wants this or my clients want this. Because remember, for the most part, they're reporting to someone else. There's another big kahuna on a big kahuna on a big kahuna somewhere else. And they don't want to feel like they are not doing their job to their people either.
I would say a lot of people would get emotionally charged in those situations, and perhaps even considered deviating from the plan that you set up for them, because of that knee jerk and just that reactivity from the market and how volatile it is.
It's my job to make sure it's my job. I want to say it's my job to make sure that doesn't happen. But, when I look at it and I understand, again, going back to listening, if there's been a material change in the client's life, if they have retired during COVID, then my recommendations may be different than someone who is a younger client who is starting to invest. Markets have been corrected. They're at lows. If they have the risk tolerance and the time horizon and available cash, great time to be invested in the markets. So I think that when you look at different points in time for clients, not every client is at the same point in the sales cycle. Not every client is at the same point in an investment cycle. So looking for those small iterations or small openings to be able to say, I've had this conversation with this client in the past, or this potential prospect or client in the past. This didn't work for them then, but look what's changed now. Look at where the world
Mhm.
is now, and sort of circle back and remember those conversations that you've had with other people and try to tie it off. Karen, I don't know about you and your business, but when you have conversations with clients, the sales cycle is a long sales cycle, right? I mean, some my clients are generally a year for a sales cycle. So from introduction to full on planning to estate planning to tax planning, we're a full circle, but we're probably 6 months for clients, initial introduction to onboarding, then we're a full year of onboarding and client hand holding to get us to a place where everybody is humming along. I mean, there's no such thing as
Mhm.
one done sale, put it in the car and away we go to the cottage. That doesn't exist unless you're, maybe, I guess, if you're selling widgets at the department store. But for the most part, if you are in sales, you have a lead time, you have a sales cycle. And in that sales cycle, in that 6 months that I take in preparation for the client coming on board, at the end of it, of course they're coming on board. Where else would they go? They have trust in our
Mhm.
organization. They have trust in our people. They have trust in our processes, because we provided trustworthy processes and trustworthy people. So, sell your truth and sell something that is going to make a difference or be valuable for your clients, or your potential clients.
I love that. Sell your truth. And I just think if you're, giving them all this value, and value is such a vague, overused word, but what I'm hearing from you is value that your customer likes. And don't be afraid to revisit conversations because the situation may be different, that may actually make sense now. But I think that's a great idea. What would you say, Robyn? I mean, you're having these straight talk conversations, sometimes difficult conversations, but you have to really come at it with a sense of conviction and confidence in that this is where we are, this is where we're going, because that has to be translated and projected to them, that they feel, okay, I'm going to go with her. But what about, younger, less experienced financial salespeople that are coming into the industry? How would you suggest they have these difficult conversations in very emotionally charged, volatile times that is really going to put their buyer at ease, or allow them to continue to trust the partnership?
I've been through three major market meltdowns since my career. So 2008 financial crisis, 2018 we had the tariffs with Trump, and then we went through COVID. So three major market meltdowns where we've seen the markets correct to significant values. And in my business, if you're invested in wealth management, you're going to ride up and down with some of those major swings in the market. I started in 2008. I started in the business in 2008 and the market fell in 2008. It was a huge correction. And I remember at first I was like, okay, so, they call us the bear market baby because you get in and the markets, I literally got in the business and the market going pooh, all the way down. So now you're a new young advisor. You're trying to figure out how to start your business. You're trying to create the credibility. You have clients that you may have gotten from, people higher up in the chain. And now you have to figure out, how to communicate with them. And sometimes you have to figure out how to communicate with yourself about what's going on. So I think you first need to be real about, where are you in the context of what's happening in your sales cycle or in your world. And then you have to look at it and understand, what value can I convey? As a newer advisor, you may not have the strength behind numbers. You may not have strength behind your years of experience, but you do have strength behind your voice. You do have strength behind the conversation you can have that's going to make a difference. Look to see what is the emotional state of my client right now. So if you're a young advisor and you're looking to have these conversations, sometimes, again, as we started in the beginning of this conversation, it's about listening to what it is that they have to say. So you don't have to be an expert in all areas to be able to communicate in a way that leaves them feeling like someone is watching and someone is taking care. And that whether it be yourself or you have to bring in your boss if you have a boss or someone else to come in to provide that support, ask for that support. Look for a mentor. Richard Croft, who is the company that I started my career with, has been a mentor for me during my entire career and continues to be a mentor to me now, even through Castlemark Wealth Management, and will be a mentor for the rest of my life. So, use the people in your life that you look up to. Use the people in your life that are in your business, that can help you. One of my best friends, her name was Solomon, and she was a reporter at Barry and the new VR. And I was in television at that time, and I worked for Chex Television, and it was in Peterborough. It was a CBC affiliate. And I used to watch Galit on TV, and I was like, I want to be Galit. Look at how amazing she is. I was like, how do I do that? How do I get there? And I was so young, and I didn't know what I was doing. And we're at this radio and television conference, and I actually approached her, and I was like, you know what? I want to understand how you do what you do. And I'm new in the business. Do you have an hour to be able to sit down and have a conversation with me? And I was just really authentic about, I really need some coaching. I really need some support. Could you spare an hour? And not only she did that, but, now, 15 years later, however many years later, I'm not going to date you, Galit, if you're listening to this, she's one of my best friends. So, but I've learned from her along the way. Learn from the people in your life. Learn from the people that you surround yourself with, that core people who you have in your life, whether they're directly related to your business or not. Have the same emotions, have the same conversations. Ask them, if you were an investor right now, how are you feeling? What would calm your nerves? Reach out and know that you don't know everything. Reach out for help and then sort of try to navigate your way through. But again, it's always going to start with being brave. It's brave to pick up a call, and on the other end of it is going to be, okay, so this call is going to be a bit hairy. So, find out where your entry is, listen to them because they're going to have some conversations that are scary for them, and then reiterate what you've heard and then what you're going to do to fix it. So listen, but be calm. There's no reason to, pull the fire alarm blaze here. If you are stressed out about it and you are upset about it, they are going to be stressed up and upset about it. So create the safe space to have a conversation that has the ability to move it forward. Don't go into a conversation where the blazing fire happens, because then you've just made your situation a whole lot worse. I did that
Don't.
many times to start, and get out of your own way, I guess, is probably the long answer to that question.
Yeah, well, that's my husband, who's also a salesperson, always says, "Don't hit the panic button," because they're watching you, right? Years ago, I was a flight attendant, and they would always watch my face, because if I'm panicking, they're panicking, right? So I think as an advisor, you need to be the voice of reason. As you mentioned, you want to be calm. But I think being vulnerable and asking for help, like if you're junior and you have a manager, or find that mentor to really help develop you, and also get the voice of the customer. Like, what are they seeing in their business that will help them share insights with their current and potentially future customers? Because they don't have, unfortunately, the track record yet, right? So they have to leverage the company track record, or people who have blazed the trail before them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Learn from the experts. That's what I have done my entire career, and I'll continue to do that for the rest of my career, because there's always something to learn. There's always something to lean in. There's always something that's beyond you, but just don't allow yourself to spin out. And if you
Mhm.
spin out, come back to home base, reset your intentions. Set your standard. I mean, I set my standard and set my standard and set my standard. And sometimes I fall below my standard, but I'll just dust myself off, reset my standard, reset my standard. So be clear, whatever sales capacity you're in, is what is your standard and what is your deliverable that you are going to provide to your client based on your standard. And then keep reaching that bar and keep leveling up, and know that you're not always going to hit it, but allow
Mhm.
yourself the grace and the freedom to learn from that mistake, because that's what's going to give you that, like, it's going to give you that grit where you just get in the mud and learn from it and take those valuable lessons, and you'll see amazing things in your business. I grew up on welfare. I mean, I grew up in Niagara Falls on welfare for most of my childhood or my developmental years, and it's a completely different place than where I am today. But if it wasn't for that grittiness, and if it wasn't for the lessons I had to take through money and what money really means, and how to really go out and earn a living and make money and be able to have, being hit against the head and being mocked and teased and those things, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So, a lot of people have that same, it's my past that's given me where I am today, and I wouldn't take anything back. And I think for anyone that's in any position where they've had to go through things in their life, that remains true, but that forms part of you. And be okay to have conversations about that. Be okay to be relatable to other people, in your channels and in your sales funnel, and have conversations about what it's taken for you to get to where you are, and that things are not, always rosy on every side of the street. And you need to, if you want to be really great at whatever it is that you do, it's that passion, that grit, that authenticity, and your clients will feel it. Your clients will know it, and they will trust it. Sell them a bill of goods. Anybody can do that. So
Mhm.
just be clear about that.
Yeah, I think being relatable is huge. And I think even just, sharing a bit of your story is like, that's what's giving you that hunger, that grit, that tenacity to just fight. And not only did you fight for yourself, now you're leveraging that for your clients so that you can help them achieve their, financial goals. Well, you know what, Robin, you've shared so many insights and so many stories about what you're doing. And really, a lot of the words that comes into mind is authenticity, just knowing yourself, being yourself, really listening to the details for your clients. And don't go in there assuming that you know what they are. Like, seek to understand first, and see, even, is this a good fit? Because as you mentioned when we started this conversation, sometimes you're trying to, ram a square peg in a round hole. It's not a good fit. So I think just not being desperate, and usually that comes with, not a robust pipeline, but just really knowing yourself, knowing the value you can provide your customer, being brave, leaning into the discomfort, and getting that feedback, and resetting when I need to. So I fell short there. Maybe analyze, why did I fall short? What can I do differently? But just keep those iterations and that cycle going, because who knows, like, especially in the financial market, there's so many ups and downs that we have to be ready for whatever comes our way.
Absolutely. So, and I think that, and again, whether it's the financial markets or in different sales businesses or any business, there is always a cycle to the market. You're always going to have the cycle to the market. You're always going to have an expansion, trough. You're always going to go through those periods. So, when you are going through those periods that are harder, make sure that you're looking at your business plan. You're looking at where you are in the sales cycle, and understand that, we may be going through a contraction period, but after contraction, we have expansion. So after those, those really tough times, we have, times that the sky's open. And as salespeople, sometimes, you know, there's tumbleweeds rolling around in the backyard and no one's around. And sometimes there's more people in the pipe that you can fill. So just be clear that it is a cycle. If you do the work and you plant those seeds, and my grandmother once told me that, if you plant the harvest, the harvest is not going to grow right away. You need to give time. Time is a salesperson's best friend, because you need to cultivate the relationship. So plant the seeds, wait for the harvest. And sometimes that's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. So just allow the time for that to grow, allow for that crop to be able to be at a place where you can then start to sow it. I'm not a farmer, thank God, or people wouldn't eat, but start to work those crops and work that world. But it's all going to come down to that time. And I think if there's anything, to sort of leave it with today, Karen, it's whether it's in my personal life, whether it's in my business life, it's about the drip, and the drip is, it sounds weird. It sounds like a tap, but it's that consistent small drip, time and time and time and time again, that's going to build the success. It's that success topped on a success, topped on a success, failure, topped on success, failure. So level up those small experiences that you have. Take the wins, like celebrate your wins. Because if you're only looking for the failures and, oh, I did that and I did that wrong, or I did that wrong, then you're going to miss the point of living that passionate life full of sail and grit. Like take those small little nuggets and just top them on each other and put them in a little bag and put them in your purse and, treat yourself.
I love that. And I would say women, from a gender perspective, probably need to lean into those mini celebrations a little bit more, because, that's contagious. That's the dopamine hit, right? And that we re-inject that into our customers, that exchange of, passion. So I think,
And you inject it into yourself, Karen.
yeah,
Like, you've done all of these things, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, that's finished. What's the next thing on my plate?
yeah.
I'm a box checker. There's no question I'm a box checker. So I like the boxes. I like to check them off. That's how I keep myself organized. But when I check a box, I'm like, I just checked that box, right? So, you take that time, and as much as you celebrate your clients' wins and successes, celebrate your own.
Yeah.
Be present to what you've been able to achieve, whether it be selling $1 million software package, or whether it be landing a new multi-million-dollar client, whether it be starting your business or meeting a sales quota, whatever that is, take the time to sit back and truly recognize that these roles, the role of a salesperson, the role of what we do, it is hard work. And take those wins, because there's days where you're just going to get pummeled, and just remember the sunshine days when that happens to you, because it'll always bring you back to the ground base. But again, the wins are so important.
Yeah, the hard days are the days you need to open that bag in your purse and take a little smell of whatever you put in there to keep you going.
Yeah. And no revenge shopping. This is not the time to do any revenge shopping. So,
Coming from a financial advisor. So, Robyn, I'm sure there's many people that resonated with themselves in the story, whether it being on the buyer or the seller standpoint. If they wanted to learn more about you or even follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I have a lot of different social media channels. So depending on where you are, being Robyn Thompson, I'm on LinkedIn, robyn.thompson.money for Instagram. I would go on to Castlemark Wealth Management. So Castlemark Wealth Management has, at the bottom of the screen, has all of my social shares. So you can follow my Vimeo account, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, my Facebook. It also has a way to contact me. So you can access me directly through email or through the consultation on the website. And that's the best way to sort of get in touch with me. But again, follow my feeds, follow my social shares. If you're interested in finance, if you're interested in living well, investing well, and being well, then, I'm all up for that. So, I'm, happy to follow along. Thank you so much, Karen, for having me on. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation. It's not normal that I get to talk about these types of things. Usually they're much more financial in nature and compliance in nature and market centric. So it's really nice and refreshing to be able to talk to someone about the nitty gritty of how we actually get our businesses done. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for your insights. And yeah, we got to see a little bit behind the curtain as to what drives the success with Castlemark Wealth. So I appreciate your time. All those channels and websites will be in the show notes for everybody. So again, thank you so much, Robyn. I know it's always got to be, time is a currency we trade in. So I am respectful of your time, and I want to thank you for it and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
My pleasure.